Welcome to the deep dive. We're going on a journey back in time today.
Ooh, I like journeys. Where are we headed?
This time we're going to the Low Countries,
The Low Countries. Okay.
but specifically between 1050 and 1302,
Right?
when we saw the rise of cities and a whole new class of people, the urban bourgeoisie.
Sounds fascinating. How are we going to learn about all this?
Well, we've got some Dutch high school history books to guide us.
High school history books. That takes me back.
Yeah, but trust me, this is good stuff.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. So, what kind of insights can we glean from these high school texts?
Well, we'll see how advancements in farming actually led to more cities.
Really? That's an interesting connection.
It is. And we'll also learn about these powerful merchant guilds.
Guilds. Now we're talking power dynamics and intrigue.
Oh, there's plenty of that, and even a legendary battle where commoners went head-to-head with the elite.
Wow. So, from plows to power struggles, it sounds like we're in for a wild ride through history.
Yeah, you could say that.
Well, let's dive in then. What makes this era in the Low Countries so special?
It's really remarkable how much society changed during this time.
Changed how? Give me the lowdown.
Well, imagine going from a mostly rural life to one where cities were the center of everything.
Ah, urbanization. A classic historical shift.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to explore.
All right, so what was the driving force behind this transformation? Was it just that people got tired of the countryside?
Well, our sources tell us that even simple innovations, like a new kind of plow called a keerplug, had a big impact.
A plow. Okay, I'm intrigued. How did a plow change the course of history?
Well, the keerplug made farming way more efficient.
Ah, so farmers could produce more food? I see
Yep.
where you're going with this.
Exactly. That meant more food, a growing population, and eventually people had to specialize in trade.
And that's where cities come in, right? More people, more demand, more specialized skills.
Exactly. It's like a chain reaction.
It's amazing how one invention can trigger such massive social and economic changes.
Yeah. And we start in the early Middle Ages with the Low Countries, mostly rural.
Okay.
But things start to change. Cities pop up. And one of the first to thrive was Utrecht.
Utrecht. That name rings a bell. Is that present day Arras?
Yeah, you got it.
I've heard of Arras. It's in northern France, right?
Right. And it's a great example of what made cities grow during this time.
Okay, so break it down for me. What made Utrecht so special?
Well, first you got the fertile land for agriculture, thanks in part to that keerplug.
Right, that makes sense. A solid agricultural base is essential.
And then there was sheep farming for wool.
Ah, wool. The foundation of the famous Flemish textile industry, right?
You know it. High-quality Flemish cloth was in high demand all over Europe.
So, Utrecht had the resources, the skilled labor, and a product that people wanted. That's a great start. But there's got to be more to the story.
You're right. Location, location, location.
Of course. Real estate is always key, even back then.
Utrecht was perfectly situated on trade routes between France and Italy.
That's prime real estate, a major crossroads for commerce.
Exactly, like being in the middle of a bustling highway.
Yeah, I get it. So merchants could easily connect with wider markets, making Utrecht a hub for trade and prosperity.
It all added up. But don't forget the rise of a monetary economy.
Ah, yes. That was a game changer, wasn't it? Made trading so much easier.
Definitely. It helped wealth accumulate.
And fueled the rise of a certain social group.
Which brings us to the guilds.
Ooh, the guilds. Those enigmatic medieval institutions, shrouded in mystery and power.
Our sources say the merchant guilds in Utrecht were really powerful.
Okay, I'm ready for some guild gossip. Lay it on me.
Well, guilds were like clubs for craftspeople or merchants.
So like a medieval trade union, protecting their interests, setting standards.
Exactly. They were the rule makers and enforcers for their trades.
Fascinating. What kind of power did they wield? Was it just about setting prices?
Well, they did set quality standards, prices, and even had their own courts to settle arguments.
Wow, that's some serious authority, like a mini government within the city.
Oh, and they had a say in how the city was run.
Wait, really? So it wasn't just about economics. These guilds were dipping their toes into politics as well.
Big time. In Utrecht, the merchant guilds were even lending money to nobles.
Whoa, talk about influence, essentially bankrolling the city's elite. That's some next-level power play.
It really was. So we've got these busy cities, trade routes all over the place, and powerful guilds.
It's a recipe for excitement. What happened next? Did Utrecht become the undisputed champion of the Low Countries?
Well, as more cities popped up and got Stadsrechten.
Stadsrechten. Remind me what those are again.
Oh, it's like a charter that gave towns special privileges and freedom.
Ah, right. Autonomy and special perks. So More cities were flexing their muscles, vying for power and
It
influence.
got competitive.
Yeah.
Cities wanted economic and political dominance.
That's like a recipe for tension.
Mhm.
So where does Bruges fit into all of this?
Bruges is about to steal the show.
Ooh, a plot twist? Tell me more.
By the 13th century, Bruges had everything.
Lay it on me. What made Bruges the it girl of the Low Countries?
Well, it had a strategic location on the North Sea and was connected to all these trade routes.
Ah, so it was a gateway to the world.
And it had links to the Hanseatic League up in the Baltic region and even Spain and Italy.
Wow, a truly international player. So Bruges became the new hotspot, eclipsing Utrecht.
It became like the New York City of its time, a real melting pot of cultures and goods.
That's a fantastic analogy. So what happened to Utrecht? Did it just fade into obscurity?
It was still important regionally, but Bruges had taken the lead.
Ah, the ebb and flow of power. It's a tale as old as time. And it wasn't just cities vying for supremacy, right? This shift also mirrors a changing social scene within the cities themselves.
Right. This is where we see the rise of a new class, the urban bourgeoisie.
Hold on, let's unpack that term. Who were these urban bourgeoisie? Were they just city folk with a fancy name?
They were the wealthy merchants, often the ones in those powerful guilds.
Ah, okay. So they'd amassed wealth and influence through trade, those savvy business moguls.
And they started living like the nobility, with big houses, fancy clothes, and art collections.
Ooh la la. Trying to keep up with the Joneses' medieval style.
You got it. But medieval society was very hierarchical.
Yeah, everyone had their place, right? Nobility at the top, then clergy, then commoners.
And these urban bourgeoisie were kind of shaking things
I
up.
bet that ruffled some feathers. Imagine these nouveau-riche merchants flaunting their wealth while the artisans and laborers struggled to make ends meet.
Our sources say there was growing tension between these wealthy merchants, they were called patricians,
Patricians got it.
and the commoners over how the city was run and how workers were treated.
It's a classic power struggle, the haves versus the have-nots, and this tension, I presume, is leading us to a dramatic showdown.
This all leads to the Battle of the Golden Spurs in 1302.
The Battle of the Golden Spurs. Now that sounds epic. Isn't that where the common folks stood up to the elites?
It is, and it's a story for another time.
You're killing me with suspense. But for now, I'm left wondering, how did farming techniques and the rise of cities lead to such a dramatic clash? I'm hooked. I can't wait for the next chapter.
Stay tuned. So we're back, and we're diving headfirst into the Battle of the Golden Spurs.
Ah, yes. This battle, it's not just about fighting.
Right. It shows what was happening in the Low Countries, like socially and politically.
Exactly. It's a story about the people, their struggles, and how they fought for their freedom.
So set the scene for us. What led to this big battle?
Well, we have the French king, Philip IV,
Okay.
and he saw Flanders, this wealthy and kind of independent region, as his chance to take control.
Oh, I bet the Flemish people weren't too happy about that.
They're right, they weren't. King Philip, he imposed these heavy taxes.
Oof, taxes never go over well.
And he replaced local officials with Frenchmen.
So he's really trying to assert his authority.
Yeah. And he basically tried to take away all the freedoms that Flemish cities had.
Sounds like he was asking for trouble.
Yeah, he was poking the bear, so to speak.
And how did the Flemish people react to all of this?
They felt like their whole way of life was being threatened.
I can imagine.
I mean, they were used to governing themselves
Right.
and to having economic independence.
And then suddenly, boom, it's all gone.
Gone. And they got slapped with those heavy taxes, too, so it was a recipe for rebellion.
So they decided to fight back.
They did. And it's amazing who actually made up this rebel army.
Who was it?
It wasn't just professional soldiers. Oh, no.
Who else was there?
It was artisans, farmers, everyday people,
Wow, a real people's army.
And they were willing to risk everything to protect their rights.
That's incredible, but how could they possibly win against the French knights? I mean, weren't they like the best warriors in Europe at that time?
Well, the Flemish rebels, they were clever.
Okay, how so?
First off, they knew the terrain, which gave them a huge advantage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Home field advantage.
Right. And second, they used really smart tactics.
Like what?
Well, the battle happened near Kortrijk in this marshy area. Yeah, and they basically lured the French knights into this bog.
Oh no, a trap.
Yeah, and all that heavy armor and those big horses the knights had.
Became a burden.
Totally. They were stuck in the mud.
I bet that wasn't how they pictured a glorious knightly battle.
Not at all. And the third thing the Flemish rebels had going for them,
What's that?
pure determination. They
Yeah.
were fighting for their homes, their families, their way of life.
I guess you could say they were fighting for their freedom.
Exactly, like a cornered animal, they fought back with everything they had.
It's a true underdog story, so did they actually win?
They did. It was a huge victory. It shocked all of Europe.
Wow.
The Battle of the Golden Spurs, named for the spurs they collected from the defeated French knight.
Oh, that's where the name comes from.
Yeah. It was a win for the common people, showed that even the strongest armies could be beaten by ordinary people fighting for a cause.
This is why I love history. It's full of surprises. But it wasn't just about the battle itself, right? I mean, it must have a lasting impact on the Low Countries.
Oh, absolutely. The Battle of the Golden Spurs didn't completely flip the social order on its head,
Right.
but it did give the commoners more power, more of a voice.
So things started to change.
Yeah, it helped to kind of limit the power of those rich patricians,
Okay.
and it really strengthened a sense of Flemish identity and unity.
They'd proven themselves.
Yeah, and it set the stage for future fights for independence.
So what happened to those urban bourgeoisie after this victory?
Well, they didn't just disappear.
Right, they were still powerful.
Yeah, but the Battle of the Golden Spurs made them realize that they had to listen to the common people.
They couldn't just ignore them anymore.
Exactly. They had to be more inclusive in how they governed
To share the power a bit more.
and consider everyone's needs, not just their own.
It sounds like things were constantly changing back then.
Oh, they were. This whole period from 1050 to 1302, it was just constant change and
A
upheaval.
lot happened in that time.
We've seen plows changing farming, cities exploding with trade,
Powerful guilds.
and the people rising up to demand their rights.
It's amazing how it all connects.
Yeah, history is never static. It's always moving, always changing, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
So where do we go from here?
We've seen this chain of events, how it led to the rise of the urban bourgeoisie, but now we have to consider their legacy, how their influence shaped the Low Countries in the long run.
Sounds like a great topic for our next deep dive. All right, we're back. We've journeyed through the rise of cities, those powerful guilds, and even that dramatic Battle of the Golden Spurs.
Quite a ride. But now we got to think about the lasting effects of all this change in the Low Countries. The legacy.
What did they leave behind? Why should we care today?
Well, the legacy of the urban bourgeoisie, it's complicated.
How so?
On the one hand, they were the ones pushing economic growth and new ideas.
It really got things moving.
They were all about trade, built new industries, and really set the stage for the Low Countries we know today.
So they were like the pioneers, paving the way for the future.
Exactly. They were all about trying new things, and that helped to shape the whole economic landscape of the region.
Like what kinds of things?
Think about the sophisticated financial systems they developed.
Uh,
And those vast trade networks, those innovations, had an impact that lasted way beyond the 13th century.
It's crazy how these events from so long ago can still affect us now.
It is. But we also can't forget about all that tension and social unrest, remember?
Yeah, the Battle of the Golden Spurs showed us that.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how the urban bourgeoisie dealt with that in the long run.
So it wasn't just about getting rich. They had to use their wealth and power responsibly.
You got it. The Battle of the Golden Spurs was like a wake-up call.
What do you mean?
It showed them that true prosperity for everyone requires everyone getting along and working together.
It's about more than just individual success.
Right. Over time, they had to adapt, be more inclusive in their governance, and work towards a more just society.
That's a lesson we can all learn from.
Absolutely. Balancing economic progress with social well-being is something we're still figuring out today.
It's a challenge.
But looking at the urban bourgeoisie gives us some clues about how to deal with those kinds of changes.
Yeah, it shows that we need to be flexible, balance our own goals with the needs of others, and make sure everyone benefits from progress.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
So even though we're talking about a specific time and place, the story of the urban bourgeoisie has these universal themes that we can relate to today.
Exactly. And that's what makes history so cool. It's not just a bunch of boring facts and dates.
It's about people.
Yeah, it's a living, breathing tapestry of stories about individuals, their communities, and their struggle.
And their triumphs.
And those stories can teach us so much about our own lives and the challenges we face today.
That's a great way to put it. Well, we've explored the rise of cities, the urban bourgeoisie, that epic Battle of the Golden Spurs, and what it all means for us today.
It's been a wild ride through history.
And we've reached the end of our deep dive.
I've really enjoyed exploring this with you.
It's been fun. And to all our listeners, we want to hear from you. What stood out to you? What connections do you see between this period and our world today?
Yeah. Let us know in the comments.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.